Thank you very much. As I say, good evening and welcome everybody to the Kenton series of Where Are They Now? I never thought that I would have the privilege of sitting here in Netanya speaking to you this evening and welcoming Rabbi Jackson, welcoming Frankie Jackson back into Kenton for a very special evening. We are seriously aware of the sacrifice that you're making this evening at the moment. And we hopefully will fit, bearing in mind it's already gone 10 o'clock here, we'll try and make sure that you've got plenty of time to still watch what you need to after this session. Thank you very much for that. When I was asked to introduce Rabbi Jackson this evening, I was happy to say, yes, please, thank you very much indeed. But then when I think about it, it's really difficult to introduce somebody that needs no introduction whatsoever to Kenton. It occurred to me that I could actually ask and say to something else, what's the difference between Rabbi Jackson and Jose Mourinho? And I think the answer there is that Jose Mourinho purports to be the special one. But if we in Kenton can look at you tonight, and we know that you, Rabbi Jackson, really are the special one for us. Alongside Jeffrey Schisler, you guided the Kenton community through its lofty heydays in the 1970s, the late 70s. You led us to so many great things, you set so many precedents, and your legacy with the community certainly lives on to this very day. You taught us so much in the community about so many different things. And in particular, I think we'll always remember how you stood at the pulpit and managed to divide the community into our three halves for Kiddush for the Sukkah. Something that will never, ever be forgotten in the community. You also made an indelible mark in the lives of so many people. And I have to say that for Annette and myself tonight, you made an indelible mark on our marriage, because you probably don't actually remember, but you arrived a few minutes late for the chuppah. That's right. You came into the shul and went, I'm here now, we can start. And as you did this, the becher with the Kiddush wine went flying. And to this day, we have a 40-year-old wine-stained ketubah. Thanks to you very much indeed. Seriously, we thank you for being with us tonight. We look forward to a very enlightening and a lively talk. And the floor or the screen is yours. And thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Frank. Yes, I do remember that well. And I've got very, very, very fond memories with your family over a long, long period of time. How are your parents, by the way?
Thank God they're getting old, but they're fantastic. Listen, they're doing well.
Good. Please give them my love.
Thank you.
Now, so the 1st of August, 1972 was my first date, but that was when I arrived in Kenton. And immediately, and the first morning, the first Shabbat in shul was a real, it was quite shattering for me, because I'd come from Kingston on Thames with about 40 or 50 people in shul, a membership of 200. And Kenton by this time was already used. Rabbi Harris, Cyril had left such a tremendous mark on the community. I built it from the beginning. So part of our agreement, in fact, of me taking the job of being offered the job, was one of my conditions was that I needed some help. At the time, Mick Lexteen was the part-time cousin, but I felt that we needed somebody full-time, and as you know, that resulted, in fact, in the appointment of Jeffrey Schisler as the cousin, but he wasn't only a cousin, as you all well know. He did an amazing job, and with the bar and bat mitzvah classes, he stayed longer than me, and he made a very, very important, vital contribution to the community. And we were the Rev and the Rav, and you'll all remember the ladies' guild evenings, and we worked together very, very harmoniously and very, very fruitfully for a long, long, long time. I decided just to try and pinpoint a few highlights of our years in Kenton, and I would mention first the huge cheder, 3 centers, 1,500 children. So that was the first highlight, and that was amazing. We had Michael Cohen as the headmaster, the education, and through Jeffrey's sister, the bar bat mitzvah classes of a very, very high standard, and our reputation as the Hebrew classes, which was very good before I came, but it became even better mainly through the senior classes, and that was one highlight. I arrived in 72, August 72, and the highlight, the first highlight was a tragic highlight, because of course in October 1973 was the Yom Kippur War. And I will never forget sitting in my seat and Cyril Benson, who always sat on my left, went out for his usual walk on Yom Kippur during the service. And then he came back about an hour later and came over to me and whispered to say that Israel was at war. And that was indeed traumatic. I did my best to try and rally the people in terms of becoming involved in what was really a very, very, very difficult situation. And so I tried to do my part, and everybody did their part. That year was my first Yom Tov. I was supposed to be Chosen Torah together with Marcel Christian. And of course, that was all finished, that was cancelled. And I remember as a result of that Yom Kippur War, that Monty Bennett and I traveled to Israel some months later with huge caseloads of stuff, which we took for the troops. So, as I said, that's the Yom Kippur War was the first highlight in order of the as things happen. As I say, educationally, we were a very high standard, very much so before we came. The Bar Bat Mitzvah class, which Jeffrey started, was excellent. One thing which I introduced and which was appreciated, I had done it in Kingston, and Frankie and I did it, and because Frankie, without her, couldn't have done it because she did all the organization. And that was the Bat Chayil supper. We felt that there should be something specific, something for the girls, and a Bat Chayil supper night with their families. They had a wonderful Friday night dinner, sang Zmirot, so they lit their candles. So it was an experience for the Bat Mitzvah or Bat Chayil girls, who at that time, of course, we only had Sunday, once a year, general service for the Bat Chayil or the Bat Mitzvah girls. So I've mentioned Bat Mitzvahs or Bat Chayils. And now, of course, I've also got to mention Bar Mitzvahs. Now, when we in Kingston, if there was one Bar Mitzvah every 6 months, that was a lot. But as you can imagine, coming to a community like Kenton, nobody can ever believe this when I tell this to people. But in fact, there were many occasions when there were 3 bar mitzvahs on the same Shabbat. And I know that between the honorary officers, Marcel Crystal, who was just towards the end of his time, as I came in, but Alan, Cass, and Raymond Cannon, they all managed to work very hard to make very peaceful arrangements between people who would have their bar mitzvah on the same day. When you tell this to people in other shows, they just can't believe it. Everybody wanted a bar mitzvah day for their own. And I must say the bar mitzvahs in Kenton was a very, very big message for me. It taught me an awful lot, just being part of bar mitzvahs, 3 bar mitzvahs every Shabbos. And you get the feeling, one becomes a little intolerant because all the people come, they don't know how to follow the service, they only come to see the bar mitzvah, the noise is terrible. And my initial reaction to all this was, I became very intolerant towards it. And I didn't have real feeling at the beginning, or I felt I didn't have sufficient feeling for the great occasion for these individual boys, because it was just too much. But then came in 1976, the Saber Bahar, which is this week's Protea. And that was our son Jacob's bar mitzvah. Now, we were fortunate that nobody wanted to have the bar mitzvah the same day as the rabbi's son. But apart from the fact that although I wouldn't have objected if they did. So apart from that, I suddenly, instead of being the rabbi in the synagogue, I was the parent of a son and parent of children. I was a brother of a sister. I was a nephew of aunts and uncles who all came to shul for the bar mitzvah, either on the Shabbos or they came on Monday because we had a Monday davening as well. And suddenly I felt very annoyed with myself that I realized that, I wasn't tolerant enough to all the other bar mitzvah parties. People do make a noise. People are self-centered. But it's the greatest day in the life of the child, and it's the greatest day in the life of the parents. And it was a real, real lesson to me. I remember, some of you might remember as well, I mean, for Jacob it wasn't easy. I remember saying to him, after he read his parsha, I said, Jacob, you are on a hiding to nothing. You're the rabbi's son, so if it's good, it's got to be good. You're the rabbi's son. And if it's not good, oy vey, how can a rabbi's son be so terrible? But of course, we also had the additional, and most you'll all remember, the fact that we had the television program centered around that bar mitzvah. That television program was very interesting. I think he won't give me, he's got a copy, but he doesn't want anybody to see it anymore. He can't. He's nearly 60. But we had the cameras were there on the Monday, not on the Shabbat, of course. And they were not actually in shul, they were outside the shul, and they screened in from the window. But it was a great, great excitement. And I always remember the Chief Rabbi was there on the Monday morning, and I remember his word. and he quoted the parak from the previous week when it says, you know who is before you and know what is behind you. A seeing eye. That's what the parak says. A seeing eye. And he said, well, we've seen the seeing eye with the television camera. And that was a great point which people appreciate. And so I was on that bar mitzvah occasion. I was the father of a bar mitzvah. I was behaving, in fact, in exactly the same way as all the other parents behaved, and the ones that I got upset with. So I was just upset with myself that I'd been upset with them. It's such a personal excitement. And also remembered that when I was bar mitzvah in 1949 in Cork, in Ireland, at the end of the bar mitzvah and at the end of the service, the bar mitzvah boy, when he finished reading, every bar mitzvah boy had to go up to the ladies' gallery to kiss all the women. And everybody did. And you can imagine what that does for quietness and what's the word?
I don't know.
For a correctness of the shul. Another highlight for me was 1976 when the shul allowed me, got a scholarship to go to America to the Wadis Cohen Scholarship, where I studied adult education because I had been doing the Inter-Synagogue quiz, which had been successful, and the Woburn House offered me the opportunity of going, and I was in America for nearly 3 months, six weeks. And I spent 1 week in a little place that was at Rabbi Jakobovitz's suggestion, watching how he said I should go to large centers and small centers to watch how adult education is projected. And I went to this place, I spent a lot of time with Wiskin Shul. And he was still there, obviously. But I spent also a Shabbos and a weekend in a place called Wilkesboro, which is in Pennsylvania. And that was 1976. And I established somehow a connection with Wilkesboro, because the next year was 1977, which was the Silver Jubilee of the Queen. And they decided to send a group of people from Wilkesboro to England because as part of the holiday. And in fact, they stayed in and we built up a relationship. And I think Pearl Rose now, I think, still has a connection with somebody in Wilkesboro. Maybe others do as well. But we had a street party in Carlisle Gardens, and that was in the 1977 the Jubilee year. The other thing, big item is 1979. These were the years when the refuseniks, the problems in Russia were very severe, and there was a move to send rabbis and teachers and chazonim to Moscow to give talks with the refusenik groups, or to have contact with the refusenik groups. And we were asked to go, and in fact, Jeffrey and I went in 1979. It was a very frightening experience, but it was very worthwhile. And so we felt certainly that it was worthwhile going. But what was interesting, that the night before we left to go to this to Russia, Diane Steinberg's wife, you know that Diane Steinberg's wife passed away. So we couldn't be at the funeral. And we couldn't come. When we came back, we went straight round to her family, to her daughter, who lived in Wembley. And then we had probably what was the most interesting but amazing experience in my life as a rabbi anywhere. Now, Diane Steinberg, Oliver Shalom, he'd been a chaplain in the Polish army. And when he retired from Brixton and from the Base Inn, they lived in Kenton and he came to Kenton. He had already passed away before I came. But he had a little Saber Tower, which apparently was given to him by the Polish army when he was a chaplain. And this lovely Saber Tower, beautiful Saber Tower, was used in the shul regularly, in the children's service and the youth service, and very often used also for teaching lessons and also used for shivers. And this he had left there with the intention of taking it back when his grandchildren were grown up. So when I came back, Mrs. Steinberg's daughter, Henrietta, said to me, they had been through Auschwitz or Dachau, or where they had been through the concentration camps, she and her daughter, and very, very, very tense people because of that. And she said to me, you know, now that my mother is gone, I'd like to say for Torah back. Probably most of you know this story, but for me it wasn't easy. So I said, okay, I'll bring the Sefer Torah back. So I went to the shul to get the Sefer Torah, and I couldn't find it. The Sefer Torah, I tried every single possibility, every bar mitzvah, every shiva that there'd been, and the Saber Tower was gone. And then I had the task of going to Henrietta and telling her. I said, I don't know what to say. We didn't have security like we do today. You didn't have to lock up everything. People took a saber and brought it back. They told you that they'd taken it. That was the way it worked always. And so she went into absolute hysterics. It was a terrible, terrible experience. And I felt terrible and I didn't know what to do about it. And she was very upset that the shul wouldn't take a large advertisement in the Jewish Chronicle, pay for a large advertisement in the Jewish Chronicle to make sure to advertise the fact that it was missing. About 3 months later, maybe 2 months later, the Jewish Chronicle comes on Friday morning, and look inside the Jewish Chronicle, and there's a big advertisement, not the whole page, but a big advertisement, saying if anybody mentioning the Saber Tower, there's no Saber Tower, and didn't mention a reward, but please to get in touch with so-and-so. And Henrietta, the family, had put the advertisement in themselves. That day, Alfie Gordon, Oliver Shalom, was a warden, and he had to go to a funeral, so he wasn't around. But at 9 o'clock in the morning, I got a phone call from a man you all know very well, or remember, Mr. Crease, Who is the headman?
You know,
You want to tell the story? Go on.
because you and Alfie were both at Bushy.
Beg your pardon.
I got a phone call from Mr. Priest who said, Mrs. Jackson, somebody has left something in brown paper on the school step. I think it might be what is missing. And I said to him, it was just at the beginning of the time when the IRA were leaving bombs around. I said to Mr. Priest, for goodness sake, don't touch it until somebody comes and has a look. He said, it's all right, I can feel it. I can feel the knobs at the top. I've taken it into the school. So I phoned as soon as they came back from the grounds. I said, go straight down to the shul. I think it's there.
And that was the Saber Tower return.
No, oh no,
Yes.
Yeah, there was a note on the outside of the paper. I think this is what you are looking for, in block capitals.
So we went round and took the Saber Tower back. I don't think we ever got to the bottom of the story, except I feel maybe some of you there who remember the story might have some input, but I think actually it was the result of a family squabble. That some members of the family, of her family, thought they were entitled to it and they should have it, and they took it, or arranged for it to be taken. But that was shortly before, in fact, 1979. So it was towards the end of my years in Kenton. So that is a lasting memory which I'll never get out of my mind. I think also it's interesting, Frank is in Netanya. We had a flat in Netanya. Netanya has become an important part of our lives. Our lives, although now we've moved, as you know, because of Kenton. Because of Kenton. Because the first one to buy a flat in Netanya was Gerald Levy. I think he was the first. Sidney Lever also had a flat. But the main instigator of the flat buying or selling was a cousin of Peter Angel, Eric Angel, who lived in Netanya. And so an awful lot of Kenton people bought flats, either holiday flats or moved. Marcel Crystal, the Bennetts, the Gordons, all ended up in Kenton. Now, when Deborah, our eldest daughter, got married, we had this holiday flat because we bought one in 1980 because we didn't have our own home. Carlisle Garden didn't belong to us. So we bought this holiday flat in Kenton, in Netanya. And but when Deborah got married, we weren't going to Netanya very much anymore. So we changed it for a flat in Yerushalayim. When we retired, we said to each other, now where are we going to live? And we both decided that we wanted to go back to Netanya. Why? Because apart from anything else, our friends were still there. And who are our friends? They're our Kenton friends. So the whole of our life, in fact, has been based on our relationship with Kenton, although I've been spent time in other places. So that's where I think I'm going to stop. Yes, my wife would like to. You never asked me before.
No, because I'm not your wife. For this, I'm not your wife. I'm Frankie. I want to say, I have to speak about the ladies of Kenton. The Ladies Guild of Kenton, certainly when in our day, were the most fantastic bunch of ladies. They would put their hands to anything, and anything that I ever asked them to do, or any project that we thought we could do, they were always very, very willing. It is the only shul we had any acquaintance with where we decided, why do we waste money buying biscuits in parkways for Shabbos Kiddush? We've got a good kitchen in the shul. Let's have the ingredients there. Any of the ladies who feel that time, they can go down and bake the biscuits in the shul for the Kiddush the next day. And for that, Pearl was one of the leaders. Jeanette Cannon went down. I went down, and there was always a supply of fresh biscuits baked in our own kitchen. Also, Frank, I'm sure your mother will remember this. I think at the time of Jacob's bar mitzvah, I was
smiling already.
I was co-chairman with the Rini Crystal, but of course I couldn't have anything very much to do with the kiddush that we were putting on in the shul for after shul for the Shabbos morning. And they went to, I think it was Connie Shack, who used to supply our kiddush things. And Connie Shack always had sweet gefilte fish balls. But in my family and his family, we didn't like sweet gefilte fish balls. And the mantra between your mum and Rini Crystal was to Connie Shack, no sugar in the gefilte fish balls. And the kiddush was wonderful without any sugar. But I really and truly I really do want to say what a wonderful guild the Kenton Guild was. Our Saturday nights out with the Ladies Guild was so much fun. And I think everybody was very, very appreciative of whatever the ladies did.
I think as far as Kenton is concerned, when I went from Kenton to the suburb, Kenton had the best parents association than any other cheder anywhere. Well, Bernard Lando was the leader, I think, at one time. But I tried to set up a parents association in the suburb. They wouldn't have anything to do with it because, you know, as long as you can pay somebody, they don't want to do any work. And the work, that programming on a Sunday morning with the cheder moving from St. Gregory's to Oxenden Hill and so on, it was unbelievable, the organization that went there. And kol hakavod to all of them. Yeah. Okay, it's open for you. Got a few minutes for any questions or any comments that you want to make.
Okay. Frank is unable to conduct this because he hasn't got a mouse. Is that correct, Frank? You can.
We have got a mouse, but we haven't got any batteries.
We are isolated and not allowed to go out and buy the batteries that died 18 months ago.
But you've got plenty of whiskey, I understand.
That's not a problem, thank you.
You've got to get your priorities right.
That improves by age.
Okay, so I'm going to try and do my best to conduct this. David Stockman, if I see hands up, we'll try. Please put your hand up using your reactions button. So if you use your reactions button, which is at the bottom of most people's screens, and then we'll try this. But please bear in mind that Rabbi Eddie Jackson does want to watch the football soon, so we will keep it as fairly brief. So David and Carmel, go for it.
Hello, Rabbi Eddie.
Hi.
See you.
You're looking really well.
Yeah, we got married on July the 30th, 1972 in Wembley, and we transferred our membership to Kenton in November 72.
We moved in the September.
Yeah, and we came to you because we didn't know any young marrieds, and you got together a list, and there were 100 couples who'd been married for 5 years or less. And you had meeting in your house, one meeting from A to K and L to Z, but because we'd inaugurated it, we came to that meeting, and I think there were about 50 people turned up at that first meeting.
And we made all
and that's where a majority of our friends came from, and we're friendly with them till this day.
And we thank you very much for getting that off the ground.
So
Yeah,
we
I
wish
remember
you,
I know the response was amazing. And I keep on meeting people. We met in your house.
yeah. So we thank you very much for that, and
That's
we
a
wish
great
you
pleasure.
continued good health in your retirement.
Thank you very much indeed. Come and see us.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Brenda, Mrs. Symes, come back.
Sorry, I was putting the light on. I have to thank, yes, Mount Stewart Avenue. When you came back from Russia with Jeffrey Schisler, and you gave a report of it, an evening in the shul, and you reported everything, you took it in turns. Every few minutes you took it in turns, and you made such an influence on Arthur and I that we went twice until I was, we were refuseniks ourselves. And Arthur always said it was because I was a troublemaker, because I was always, I corresponded with them and we'd sent gifts to them. But that evening really influenced. I became a very active member of the 35s because of that evening.
Oh, great. I'll tell you a funny story about that night. Somebody was there, I can't remember. A mother of either Rhoda or Cyril Marx. And she was there because they brought her that Saturday night to speak. And she stayed the whole evening. And then when they went home, she said to them, "Oh," she says, "what a terrible time the rabbi had in Israel." So they said, "Mommy, Israel? He wasn't in Israel, he was in Russia." Russia? Who goes to Russia? That's very moving, Brenda. I'm delighted that well, it was quite an experience.
Thank you, Brenda. Jeffrey Wolf next.
Yeah. Evening, Rabbi and Jackie and Frankie. You and I, although I think, were you actually born in Ireland?
Yeah, I was born in Cork.
Oh, right. Well, even though you were born in Cork, you and I share something. We were born during the reign of Edward VIII.
Oh, yes.
Yes. But I think you're a few months younger than I am. Rabbi Harris was a few months older. So I was in between that, in between George V and George VI as well. But I do remember Jeffrey Schisler in particular ensuring that our son Leon actually benched as part of his bar mitzvah celebration. But his was in 1977 and was one of the doubles.
All right. Yeah, I know. But when I was born, my Hebrew name was going to be Aliya because that was my grandfather. So like still today, but certainly in those days, mothers had to find English equivalents of Hebrew names. So what is Eliyahu? Well, so you're quite right. It was Edward VIII. She was in love with Edward VIII. All the women were, because he was quite a character. So it was going to be either Edward. The other great E in that time, or the women were in love with, was Errol Flynn. So, it was a choice between Edward, Errol, and eventually my uncle came from Dublin. He said, "I've got the name Elmer Gantry." But I must say, I was very happy that they stayed with Edward.
Right. Well, I mean, I was called Jeffrey because my grandfather was actually Gustav, because they were, my parents came from Germany.
Right.
So it was what you could get as an anglicized equivalent.
Yes, that's right.
Anyway, I'll let somebody else have a go.
Right.
Okay, Jean and Barry Zakon, and then followed by Rita and Gary, followed by Harold Abrahams, followed by Linda and Robert Brody. So Jean and Barry, good evening. Lovely to see you.
Hello, Rabbi Jackson and Frankie. Hello.
Did you put your names down?
I want to tell you one thing, that when anybody asks me, I've traveled quite a distance away from Kenton, but when anybody asks me, what is my shul? I say, Kenton. I say, I can't Dublin there anymore, the walk's too far for me, but Kenton is my shul. Kenton is what made me into the Jew that I am. And I want to thank you for one thing especially, is that you insisted on starting up B'nai Akiva in Kenton. And this has had a great effect on all our young people. If you came now to Northwest London, you would find Kenton boys and girls are now men and women who hold important places in all the communities that they have sometimes, I think, taken over. And the other memory I want to share with you is that I was one of the HOs who had to go to apologize to the Kelly family for the loss of their Saber Tower. I think that was one of my worst memories in my life. But it's been made better now by seeing you again. So thank you for all that you did for us in Kenton. Thank you very, very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Lovely to see you.
Rita and Gary next. Thank you.
Hey, hi there. Our first recollection, my first recollection of you was when you were junior minister, junior rabbi at Hampstead Shul, West Hampstead, and Rita and I were both in the choir.
Oh, it's Rita.
The dancing.
He's ready to
dancing.
And Rita was also knew you both from B'nai Akiva.
Yes.
So we're going back a hell of a long way.
That was when I was in Hampstead, was 1958.
Yes, that's right. Yes, 58. 1960 at Hampstead Shul. So we go back a long time. And also we were with you in the Parents Association, at the Cheder.
Right.
So we've had a long association with you.
Yeah, indeed. Lovely to see you.
Thank you.
Could Harold Abrahams unmute himself, please?
Jack in Harold Abrahams.
Lovely. Thank you. Good.
Rabbi Jackson and Frankie. Yeah. My sons Darren and Mark send their regards to you.
No, yes.
Yes, and you officiated even at Mark's wedding, and that was 31 years ago.
I did.
But also, I want to know how Frankie is, because you was always on the phone, because Frankie had problems with her back. Do you remember?
Yes, well, thank God.
Yes, she is.
I'm here, thank goodness. My back, I had 2 discs removed and my back has been fine.
Good.
The last 3 months I've had a hip replacement and that is also fine. So I am walking on my own 2 legs.
Well, I think Dr. Steinberg could do that now because he can't walk very well.
Yeah.
Do you remember you always used to phone?
Yeah, Dr. Steinberg.
You always wanted an appointment.
Yeah, I can only remember when I used to go to Dr. Steinberg before I would have an operation, and he would give me an injection inside.
That's it.
As I walked in, he'd shout at the nurse, "Have you got the elephant needle ready for her?"
Well, my son was a diplomat in Israel. He was 3 years ago. Yes,
really?
The British Embassy in Israel. He's a diplomat, and now he's been transferred to San Francisco, and he sends his regards to you.
Thank you very much. I've still got photographs of your bar mitzvah. I came across them a couple of days ago.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Lovely to see you both. And take care, both of you.
Keep well.
Rabbi, it's David Hampton here again. Before I call on Linda and Robert Brodie, and then Anne Leach, and then Peter Lexteen, I'm keeping an eye on the time for you. If we say it's 10 to 11 minutes to, if we finish on the hour, is that okay for you?
Okay.
So we'll give it 10 more minutes. So if everybody can try and be as brief as possible. I know it's very hard. We'd all like to talk. We've all got so many anecdotes. I mean, I'm sitting here busting with stuff I'd like to say, but over to Linda and Robert.
Hi, Eddie and Frank. It's so lovely to see you. My memories, I think, go back further than other people have mentioned today. I remember Frankie making the potatoes at a camp, a B'nai Akiva camp in Newbury.
That's right, yeah.
And she was making the meal, and I said, "Can I taste it?" And she said, "Aren't you fasting today?" And the other thing is that,
Even further, Robert, even further, we were in Wilson Haver together.
oh, crikey.
When your dad was the headmaster.
Yeah, I almost remember you from the maternity hospital when I was. Anyway, you left such an impression, and as a couple, you achieved that rare thing of being both respected and loved by people that remember you. And there are incidents that people are turning out tonight that they remember, and there's one I remember, and it was when you were talking about that trip you made to Russia, and you introduced yourself as Rabbi Jackson, and somebody said to you, "A rabbi una board, a rabbi without a board, without a beard," and you said, "Well, I've got no beard," and they said, "You're a rabbi without a beard. We've got a beard without a rabbi." AGB were in charge there. So thank you so much for joining us tonight.
It's always a pleasure.
Lovely to see you.
Thank you, Robert. Anne, unmute yourself, please.
For me, it's a unique experience after 46 years to be in the company of both the people who officiated at our wedding, Rabbi Shisler and Rabbi Jackson, and Rabbi Jackson, who was particularly beloved by my late dad, David Baker, and who, if I'm not mistaken, had the privilege of bringing the Kenton rabbi to Rotary.
That's right. Your dad brought me into Rotary. Yes, and I appreciate. I must say, I thought it was a bit mad in the first day, but I really did appreciate it because it was very, very useful indeed, and they had a very, very high regard for your dad there.
Yeah. And for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Peter Lexteen.
Hello.
Dr. Lexteen.
Hi, Rabbi Jackson. Peter Lexteen here. You helped me to learn about Judaism when I was in Kingston as a child, and I grew up. And then you went off to Kenton, and I thought, well, it's a good place to come and live. So when you married Sue and I, we followed you over. Oh, thank you very much.
Lovely.
It's really lovely to see you, and glad to see you're both doing well.
Are you in touch with anyone from Southampton still?
Oh yeah, I'm still a member in Kingston. I'm still a member in Kingston as well as Kenton. Yes,
we're still in touch with Anna Burns.
Really?
Anna Burns is Doreen's cousin.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm in
But
touch.
like
I'm in
Kingston,
touch with Auntie Monica.
unfortunately, our chairman in Kingston, Sheila Mann, is not at all well.
I know. I'm in touch with Monica.
Yeah.
I have all the news from Monica.
All right. Yeah. Anyway, I wish you all the best. Enjoy.
Thank you very much.
Okay, over to Stephen and Barbara now, Ken. Stephen, not a word. Stephen, not a word. It's half time.
Hi, good evening.
You got your shirt on.
What? No,
yes, got a shirt on. Got a shirt on. I would just like to say at the beginning, you mentioned, Frankie, how you started the Bachheil suppers, and I think I was probably in there at the beginning, and it was just the best. It was wonderful, and your house, when growing up, was always open. We always were there together. It was absolutely superb. You know, I went to the Cheder, taught at the Cheder, and it was just a wonderful, wonderful place to grow up. sorry. And of course, you officiated. You had a Bachal with Jeffrey Schisler and Michael Cohen and you. And then you officiated at our wedding, and then you officiated at our daughter's wedding. So it's a wonderful, we go back a long, long, long way with my mum and everything. So fabulous.
You know what is one of the nicest things is that you've got your little Kenton group that you and Jacob and Julie and Joanna,
absolutely,
and you all keep together.
And Graham, yeah. And
Joanna just did a little thing on the screen. Jacob won't be happy that you said something, or I'm not sure what.
I hope she wasn't going to be destroyed.
No, she wasn't. No, on our screen it came.
Exactly. No,
I had a long chat with your mum this week.
Good, she said. So no, it's lovely to see you looking both so well.
Yeah.
You keep well, Stephen.
Yeah, take care.
Okay.
We'll watch the second half now.
Okay.
Enjoy it. Bye.
Frank,
Thank you.
Bye.
if you can unmute yourself.
Yeah, we're not.
And we're doing very well because it's 5 minutes to. So Frank, it's over to you to finalise, to wind us up. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. Just thoughts that hearing the stories, the anecdotes that both you've given to us and that other people have added tonight, it brings me to this coming Shabbat, when we read the double Sidra, and we read the Sidrot of Behar and Bechukotai. And Behar speaks about the Yovel, the Jubilee years, and the 7-year cycle. And I think that a Jubilee is a celebration. And I think that you sort of bucked the trend, because you came to Kenton and spent 7 years, and every year was a Yovel, every year was a celebration while you were with us. And really, it means, you can tell from the atmosphere and the people online tonight, how we're all celebrating with you and your stories and your reminiscing. And for that, we thank you. Of course, Bechukotai is the final Sidra in the book of Vayikra. And as we end every book with the words of Chazak, Chazak, Vinit Chazek. And I think it's our prayer, everyone's prayer online here tonight, that the two of you, together with your wonderful family, will be strong together for many, many more years to come, that you should have the strength to be able to strengthen those around you, to inspire those around you for many years. We all really are so grateful. And we thank you very, very much indeed for being with us tonight.
Thank you so much for those beautiful words. You made me cry. Frank, you made me cry.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Frank. I will leave it running and general mayhem so people can talk to each other.